Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the 3 Gun Show, brought to you by Armalite Rifles, Breda USA, and LAG Tactical. I'm your host, Dave Hartman. My guest this week is Michigan shooter, engineer, and match director, Matt Koopikka. If you're new here, the 3 Gun Show is a weekly podcast that is all about practical shooting. I shot my first 3-gun match in 2011 and completely fell in love with it. Since then, I've shot USPSA, practical shotgun, 2-gun, and PCC matches. I have rimfire and precision matches on the schedule for 2018, and as always, I generally come back to 3-gun, as it is the sport that I'm passionate about. The 3-Gun Show is my way of giving back and introducing new people to the sport. There are over 180 hours of interviews with top competitors across a multitude of disciplines. Each week, we discover topics such as gear, technique, training, mental game, and we joke around and laugh along the way as well, especially when we discover match travel stories. If you like this type of podcast, make sure to subscribe in iTunes and leave us a review. This podcast is brought to you by Breda USA, Italian shotguns that are the best in the world, and this is a shotgun tech tip from Team Breda. Hey, this is Dave Hartman from the 3 Gun Show, and I'm with Tina Martin-Nims from Team Breda, and we are going to learn about choke selection.
So before you go out to the match, you want to make sure that you have an understanding of how what your chokes are patterned at. So what I like to do is I have my 3 main chokes that I usually use, which is a spreader, an IC, an improved cylinder, and a mod. And I set my targets out at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. And it's just like a knockover steel and a flipper. And I test to see what those how they perform at those distances with the ammo that I typically use. And so when I go out onto a stage, I already know that at, say, 35 yards, I can use my mod choke and knock it out. And I'll be ready to go.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's your tech tip from Tina Martin-Nims of Team Breda. Check out Breda's B12i 3-gun ready inertia-driven shotgun at BredaUSA.com. That's BREDA. This podcast is also brought to you by Armalite. Through Armalite, I am able to get special pricing for listeners on their line of 3-gun rifles. They have a 13.5 and an 18-inch model, both with Armalite's patented tunable comp, Timney triggers, Luth AR stocks, and they're ready to go right out of the box. If you're more of a build-your-own rifle kind of person, I have a few of their competition handguards left in 12-inch and 15-inch sizes as well. So when you're in the market for a rifle or components to build your own, just email me, dave@3gunshow.com, and I will hook you up. Anytime you see me on the range, you can check out my rifle. I'm currently rocking the 13.5-inch Shorty 3-gun rifle with a Vortex Optics Viper PST 1-6 on it, which I'm really enjoying. In this week's podcast, Matt Koopikka and I discuss the absolute basics of 3-gun, from selecting gear to knowing the rules and how to be safe. And finally, what to expect from your first club match. Matt has mentored hundreds of students into the sport at his home club in Michigan, and he's shot major matches all over the country, so he brings with him a wealth of experience. So enjoy this one with Matt Koopikka. Matt, welcome back to the 3-Gun Show.
Hey, Dave. How you doing? Thanks for having me back.
I'm doing awesome, man. It's great to have you on. It's been a while. It's been a while since we've chatted here. I was just looking at Skype, and it was like November of 2015 that you were last on the show.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. I've made a lot of changes since then.
You have? Like what?
Oh, yeah. Just my practice regimen and stuff has gotten a little bit more intense. I mean, right now it's kind of backed off. And then I've been doing better at like the major matches and things around the area.
Yeah, definitely. I got to shoot with you and your buddy Nick Molina at Generation 3-Gun, and we had a good time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I try to stay busy. I don't really get to talk to people a lot during the match. I talk a lot after the match because I'm so busy just trying to reset targets and everything, So.
Right. Now, is that like an idiosyncrasy of yours, like keep moving, or do you just kind of like try to stay in the zone for shooting's sake, or what?
Oh, I just try to stay pumped and on it, Everyone's trying to get through the stages, so I'm always like the first guy like sprinting out to the furthest plate you could possibly set and running through the woods and whatever else. I kind of get like a runner's high after a while of being out all day in the match, and I can just like feel like I can run for 100 miles, you know.
Huh. I usually get tired of matches.
Not me.
So Matt, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got from people on the last episode that you were on, which I'll put a link to in the show notes for people to check that out if they want to hear that first one, was that you talked about your practice regimen, and that helped a lot of people decide what they want to do as far as their own regimen. So how has that changed, and what are you up to now?
It's pretty much the same. I do a lot of dry fire and then correlation with my dry fire to my live fire practice. And I think now I'm more in a state where I'm working on like mental type things when it comes to practice rather than the physical aspects or physical transitions and everything like that. It comes down more to like mental type stuff. So in the future, I mean, when I work with people and I teach new people, I'm kind of working more on like the mental side of the game than I am like the physical part, except for maybe movement. I focus a lot on like movement when it comes to physicals, but.
Okay. Well, and we're going to be talking about a topic that, you know, I don't know, 3 years into the Three Gun Show, I probably should have covered with a capstone episode, especially earlier on. But we're going to be talking about like an intro to Three Gun. So is part of the mental game, is the mental game part of that intro there, or should we cover it now?
It's kind of part of it. I mean, getting started in Three Gun is mental to begin with, just because like I know that when I started competitive shooting, I didn't know anybody that was into the sport. I didn't know that anybody that was in the sport previously, so I kind of had nowhere to go. I kind of just look online and see what the rules are. And a lot of people talk about there being like a barrier for gear, like you don't have the gear so you can't shoot. Mm-hmm. My barrier is more of a mental barrier. Like I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do to not look like an idiot when I was there.
Yeah.
And really none of that really mattered too much. Once I got to my first one and I got through like the etiquette and knowing how you're supposed to present yourself and where you're supposed to go, it was no big deal from there. So people that are first starting out, just getting them to come to like my class that I host for Three Gun is hard enough on its own, just because people want to back out because it's just something that they don't want to do. It's kind of like public speaking. You're like in the eye of all for a small period of time, and it just kind of gets to people, and it's hard for them to get over that first mental block of just getting there and shooting the match. And once you're there, you realize that nobody really cares how you're shooting. Nobody really cares how bad or good you're doing. It's just kind of like a camaraderie. Everybody has a good time, and everyone's trying to learn new things and become a better shooter themselves.
Yeah, it's a good point. One of my best friends says he has a saying in reference to concealed carry, but it works for a lot of different things in life. And that saying is, unless you're a hot chick or on fire, no one is paying attention to you.
Correct. Yeah, I'd say that 100%. I've had some like amazing runs, and I'm like, hey, did you see this part? And my best friends that I travel with would be like, oh no, we weren't paying attention. We're over here like talking about what we're gonna have for lunch or whatever, you know.
I know. Like I think I asked you like 2 or 3 times at Generation 3 Gun, like, you up yet? You're like, I just shot. Like, oh. I meant to watch you, but hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the barrier to entry and that mental barrier, I think, is a huge thing. I've mentioned before on the podcast that when I started shooting Three Gun, that I just went to a Three Gun match. But I always forget that I tried to shoot a pistol match probably like 2 years before that. And I called up the dude that was running the match, and this was at a really small club that was associated with the place I used to work, and the guy was a total jerk. And so I never went to that match. And then like 2 years later is when I went to the first Three Gun match. So I missed out on like 2 years of enjoyment, 2 years of learning, 2 years of skill development because some dude was a jerk to me. And that added to like the mental hurdle, because at that point I wasn't confident in my skills enough to say, well, screw that guy, I'm going to go out there anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are new, one of those barriers is that they don't think they're good enough to start. And myself and a couple other people, Nick and Chip Montgomery, we run the biggest multi-gun match in Michigan, and it's one of the bigger ones in the area. And we'll have people every match. The monthly match, we limit it to 100 people, and every monthly match there's like 2 or 3 people there that are brand new that have never shot anything, and they get through the match fine. So a lot of people that shoot the smaller matches around our area, they won't come to our match because they're intimidated by it. Like, they think they got to build up a skill set. But then at that same match, there'll be people that have never shot a competitive shooting event in their entire lives, and they do just fine.
Yeah, I had those exact same mental blocks, Matt. Like there was like I mentioned, this was a small club that was associated with where I used to work. So there was probably only like 6 or 7 dudes that would come out and shoot multi-gun. And I got confident in that arena, but when it came to like a friend saying, "Oh, let's go over to this other club match at this other range," I would say like, I'm not ready for that yet. So
Yeah.
so how do you get over that mental block? And if someone's listening to this and they haven't shot their first match yet, what kind of advice can you give them on getting over that mental hump to actually get out to a match?
I mean, really, you just got to get up there and do it. You find one that's local in your area. Usually, you can use the internet. A lot of times now with like Facebook and everything being so popular, you can get on there and easily find someone that shoots that event, or you might be able to find a page for that event and kind of talk to some of the people there. And you might be able to find out some information. Like I remember using like Google Maps so I could figure out where to park, when I went to my first event.
Yeah.
And usually if there's someone in the area, like for me in Michigan, it's real easy for people to contact me like personally through Facebook or like Instagram or anything like that. And I can answer their questions directly. And then usually I can like meet them somewhere. I can tell them where to park when they drive in. I can meet them there and kind of like pull them in and give them a quick rundown before their first match, or squad up with them at that match. But really, if you could find anybody in your area that you kind of know or somewhat know through like Facebook, or if you can find someone that's related to one of those Facebook groups, that's probably one of the easier ways to do it.
Yeah, and so you and Chip and Nick run the match. So it's probably pretty easy to pick like one of the 3 of you guys to reach out to and say, "Hey, I'm a new guy. What do I need to do? What do I need to bring? Where do I need to go?" That kind of thing.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where I've met people up at matches that aren't my own, like a different local match. I'll meet somebody there and I'll be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go over here to sign in. We're going to go over here to register. We're going to squad up, we're going to move our gear to this area. And I've done that at different matches that are not my own. Like if people aren't from the area, the Michigan area or the Detroit area, they can contact me on Facebook and I can answer questions there as well. It's no problem. I do that all the time.
Yeah, and I've found that most match directors are super, other than the first one interaction that I had, are super welcoming to new people, and they actually make a concerted effort to let everyone know that, hey, new people are welcome here. Let's all get this person through this match.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's odd that you found a match director that wasn't of that mindset, because I've never really met anybody that was, but everyone wants their own match to be successful. And really, we almost always, all of us run these things for free. It's like, we're just doing them as a volunteer. So we want people to come in there and have a good time. I'm not making any money off of it. So the more people I can get in there to enjoy themselves or get better at shooting, the better. Yeah,
absolutely. So when you start off your 3-gun 101 classes, you kind of give people like an introduction, like an overview of what exactly 3-gun is. So how do you describe 3-gun to someone who's never shot it before?
Usually just real quick overview. I say like 3-gun is an action shooting sport. That means that we use rifle, pistol, and shotgun. We use it in a format where it involves us developing a stage plan, and we do a lot of movement. Between that, we do a lot of moving while shooting. We shoot from different positions, and we can transfer between the platforms to engage different targets. So I think what a lot of people think when they think of like a 3-gun, or like people that don't shoot competitively, when I tell them about that, they're like, "Oh, what, you shoot like clays?" Like, I'm like, no, not really. It's completely different than that. It's more of like an athletic type sport than it is like a stand in one spot and delivered rounds downrange type of sport.
Right. Yeah. Most people have in their mind like we're standing on a firing line and shooting targets at a certain distance, right?
Yeah, they think like I'm going to hold a shotgun or a rifle. I'm going to shoot some paper like down a lane, and then transmit to a pistol and shoot down a lane and then shoot some clays. Like I'm using all 3, but they don't really understand how they all kind of tie together into like one movement when you're doing a stage.
Right. And the thing that I've found, like explaining one-on-one to people like what 3-gun is, I just ask, "Do you mind if I show you a video?" And then pull up whatever match I was shot most recently and show them. I usually choose my best stage to show them, but I'll show them a stage from a match I shot recently.
Yeah, that's the easiest way, because people just don't really understand what it is until they actually see it. The good thing is that most people that are seeking out a class already know what they're looking for, so I kind of just breeze over that real quick in case there's like anybody there that might be helping out. Like a lot of times we'll have like junior shooters there, or like juniors that are going to be a junior shooter, and they'll be there with their parents, and you tell one of them doesn't really know what's going on. So I kind of give an overview for anybody in there that might be like, a boyfriend or a girlfriend of somebody that wants to shoot, or like a parent.
Right. Now, so your class is like a two-part. It's a classroom intro, and then you actually go out and shoot 2 stages to get people indoctrinated into the format of resetting and helping each other through it, and stage breakdown and stuff like that. Do you bring any sort of like audio visual component into it of like, this is what 3-gun looks like, or do you wait until you guys get out on the dirt?
Usually we set up a couple stages. They kind of touch on like some basic like 3-gun type stuff. We kind of do like a little bit of options. The targets are real easy, and we do a little bit of movement. And we usually set up 2 stages just so we can get used to the whole rotating thing and squatting up thing.
Okay.
But just to show them the thing, usually I'll grab somebody that's there that's helping me. Usually not myself or like Nick or Chip, but we'll grab like one of the guys that's there to help us out, because we'll have like 6 people there, and we'll have them run the stage. Usually these guys are above average shooters at the club, but they're not the guys that are like crushing the match. That way they can kind of see someone run it. And then later on, after everybody goes to the stages, if they want, like we'll do some like exhibition style stuff and just kind of screw around and just have some fun for a while.
Yeah. Sign autographs, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, then when you tell people how to locate a match, I mean, that's like the basic overall thing, right? Is Facebook, reach out to a match director. I always tell people to find like a local club in their area and then see if they have USPSA, action shooting, 3-gun, IDPA, something like that, and use that as an intro. Are there any other ways to find local matches?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the internet's the easiest way now, or like looking up where local clubs aren't, just going there and or like looking at their calendar and see if they have any events. Typically club events on the weekends, like USPSA, IDPA, 3-gun, those are all open to the public. That's how the club creates revenue for anybody that wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also possible that you could see where those events are, like on their calendar, and you could show up to the event without being ready to shoot at all, and you could just kind of scope it out for a little bit and just see what it looks like. Outside of that, I think Practice Score is a pretty good reference right now. I haven't used it myself because I kind of know where all the clubs are locally.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure you can go and type your area, and it'll show you like little dings of the on the map of where matches might be that are close to you.
Yeah, Practice Score has been really good, especially for me because I've done a lot of traveling around the country, and if I need to find like a local match to fill some time or something like that, I can just go to Practice Score. It knows where I am, or I can zoom in on where I am and see if there's any sort of like Wednesday, Tuesday night pistol league kind of things that I want to pick up. But it has a lot of matches listed there as well. The downside that I found to that, Matt, is that if you have like so you're in Michigan, I'm in Colorado, we kind of have a little bit of an off season, right? So right now, if I go look for action shooting in Colorado, there's no 3-gun because it only shows the matches that are already built in Practice Score. It doesn't show active clubs, right?
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, at that point, it's probably best to try to locate some local clubs in your area and then see if they have like a website associated with that, or if there's like a local gun owners forum, like Michigan gun owners and Indiana gun owners, and see if they have like a sub forum you can go to try to contact anybody from that club and see what kind of events that they have.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of sleuthing that needs to be done for finding a match.
Yeah, it's really not too bad. Pretty much everywhere you can find something going on.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so once you find a match, what's the and you've reached out to someone you know where to go, what's the next step as far as being prepared for a match? Like, how do you make sure you got all your gear and everything in order?
I think the best thing to do is like whatever match you find what rule set they're running, or locate the rules that they have and just read through that like top to bottom. A problem with 3-gun in general is that a lot of clubs have different rule sets. There's not like one standard rule set across all of 3-gun.
Right.
So something that I always tell people is when they're going to a match, like read the rules. It doesn't matter if you've been shooting for like a day or you've been shooting for 5 years or 10 years. Like when you go to a match, read those rules. And the rules should really state out what kind of equipment that you need to attend a match. And usually when people think of 3-gun equipment, they're thinking like race equipment and everything like that. You don't need anything real fancy. Like most people will have some kind of pistol. A lot of people have like an AR-15, and most people will have a shotgun, pump action, Mossberg 500. It doesn't matter what it is, Remington 870. And those are good enough to get started in the sport. And I think a mistake that a lot of people make is like just going out and either waiting to start because they don't have the right equipment, as they put it in their mind, or going out and buying a whole bunch of stuff before they go to their first match.
Yeah, going and buying a whole bunch of stuff before your first match is a terrible idea because you likely buy the wrong stuff because you don't know what you don't know at that time. You'll look, at something on the package and it says 3-gun, which doesn't necessarily mean it's proper for 3-gun, and you're missing out on like the people at the match that have experience in this game and have made those bad buying decisions, and you can learn from them.
Yeah, most everybody is more than happy to show you their gear, what they're using. And you can also, if you go to your first matches with just whatever you have, you can kind of get a good idea as to what people want, or maybe like what some local sponsors are in your area. Like everybody might, if you kind of look around or you travel around, you see that there's like little cliques. Like there's a lot of guys running Lancer stuff in like Pennsylvania, for example, because I think Lancer's close to that area.
Right.
And if you go to your local matches, you can see like, hey, look, it looks like 80% of people are using the same piece of gear. That kind of gives you a good direction to steer in, rather than just going out and buying something, like you said, that has 3-gun marked on it, which many times doesn't really mean anything of value to us.
Right. And a lot of times it's like a marketing thing, and perhaps someone that designed or built it doesn't even really know what 3-gun is, or they just know that it's cool.
Yeah. I think that happens more often than not, actually.
Yeah, unfortunately. It's funny you mentioned the Lancer thing. I noticed that when I was in Minnesota, I was like the only guy without a JP rifle.
Yeah, JP's up in there, so everyone in that area is using JP.
Yeah, people.
Lucky dudes.
I know. People love to support like the hometown people, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so
we got our own local businesses as well.
Yeah, you guys have Trigicon, right?
Matches. Yeah, Trigicon is my primary sponsor. They're local to us. We have another sponsor, Phoenix Ammunition.
Right.
They're at every one of our matches. They're at every match in the area. So I mean, once you see these people all the time, they like Trigicon has their own staff team as well. So they come to all the matches, and that's a good way to network with people that are just in the business in general.
Definitely. We have that in Colorado here as well. Burris Optics is up in Greeley. Burris, Steiner, and I think there's a third company that I always forget about. But yeah, there's definitely like that sort of regional culture, and traveling to matches all over the country, I've kind of seen it, and it's pretty cool to be a part of and watch it happen, and realize like, oh, there's like 1,000 different ways to skin this cat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, back to the original gear thing. So when I started shooting 3-gun, I didn't have, air quotes, the proper gear, right? Like I just went out with what I had. And the way I looked at it was like, I'm going to go out for training in case the shit hits the fan, right? And then once I shot it, like I realized this is so much fun, and then I fell in love with the game portion of it. And so now all my gear is like dedicated gamer gear. But I started with a Glock 17. I started with and an Uncle Mike's holster, and I started with a Mossberg 500 pump with a side saddle, and that thing I think held 6 rounds, and then I reloaded from my pocket, and then I had an AR-15 that I built myself with like I think the upper was like Palmetto State Armory or something like that, and then I put the lower together, had a mil-spec trigger, but it had Magpul furniture, so it was really cool, and iron sights, so I shot limited division, but I had fun with that gear.
Yeah, I actually have almost the same movement through the sport as you do. Like I started out just to get practice, or just to be actually more versed and get training, and then I got into the game portion. Now I'm like basically a straight gamer.
Yeah.
But my gear was very similar too. I had an 870, an M&P pistol, and a bottom barrel like AR-15. And the thing is that, like at a local match, depending on where you're at, really, but I mean, even like at our local match, which I think there's a lot of really strong shooters at. You could win the match with that gear, honestly. Like it's not really holding you back that much. Like the short tube pump action shotgun, it's not going to be the best. But I mean, like the rifle and the pistol, like there's nothing fancy there, but it doesn't really need to be for the type of targets that you engage.
Yeah, for sure. There was let's see, Colorado here, we shoot out to 200 yards because that's what our berms currently are able to go to. There's a couple places that are building 400 and 600 yard berms, which is kind of exciting. It's going to completely change the people that shoot 3-gun here, but yeah, the iron sights were just fine for that. And then when I went to an aim point, that was even better. And like you said, that fixed barrel 18.5-inch Mossberg is what I had. And that was just fine because they don't, like Colorado, they don't really put shotgun targets like super far away or make you hunt for them and everything like they do in places like Minnesota. So for club matches, it was entirely fine.
Yeah, I think a mark of like a good club match too is that it's going to be accessible for new people. A lot of clubs that you go to that are like, I want to say like less competitive. The match the presentation on targets is going to be like real simple. You're not going to have anything that's like out there that will require you to have any kind of crazy gear. It might be actually like built around the fact that people are going to be there with like a pump gun with 6 rounds. And even like our match, which I say is a little bit more competitive, we always put options and ways to keep it accessible for new people in there, where you're not going to go to a stage and not be able to complete it because you have the wrong gear.
Right. Yeah, and that's a cool thing, and I hear that from a lot of match directors because they do recognize like how intimidating it is to get into 3-gun, and they want to make it accessible, and they want to keep people coming back. There's a certain balance there, right? You want to make your great shooters even greater, right? So how do you guys deal with that balance in your match designs?
We put a lot of like options into the stages when we build them. Usually if there's a target that I know is going to be like a real hard presentation for people, like I might put a 4-inch pistol plate or a couple of them at like 25 or further for 25 yards or further.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make that like an optional shotgun target, but in order to use the shotgun on those, you're probably gonna have to sacrifice like 2 seconds of movement to get there to pick up your shotgun, or you might have to like double dip a window and go back with your rifle or something like that. Usually I'll walk the stage, or me and we'll design our own stages, and then I'll walk it like 20 times on my own to see how it correlates in each different stage plan works out. And I want them all to be really, really similar, even though they're like 5 or 6 or 7 different ways to run it. And I'll like wiggle targets around so that way it kind of stabilizes the stage. And then I'll slightly reward the harder presentation. So if somebody were to go ahead and like shoot those pistol plates with their pistol, they'd save like 3 yards of movement or something. I don't want to like reward the top guys the most, but I want to put something in there where they can flex their abilities in order to kind of squeak points off of people at every stage.
Right, and then that encourages people to say like, oh, okay, if I would have shot that with my pistol, I would have saved, like you said, a transition or going back to a window. And so they know next time, like, I need to practice my pistol skills. I need to get better at pistols so I can choose the harder option and excel at it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but really our goal for our match in general is to build the shooters up so that way they can go to a national level match and like be able to compete. So we try to keep the same challenges you'd see there as far as like, you need to have a lot of stage planning. You need to know yourself. You need to know your gear and how you move and how long it takes you to do certain tasks. And that's pretty prevalent at like the national level. So a lot of people I see go from like a local match to a national match, they get completely hosed right off the bat because it's just completely different the way that it's laid out.
Oh yeah.
And we try to bridge that gap. So we try to bring in new people and then make the stage accessible, but then allow people that are good to flex their skills and do different stage plans so that way they can get built up for a national level match.
Yeah. And that's a very important thing too, because if you have guys that are out there, you want them to keep coming back to your local match and use that as practice, and then also cultivate and encourage and mentor all the new shooters that are out there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the more experience that we can get into the club, the better, basically. So we have a good number of people that go shoot like bigger matches. When they come back, all that data and all that information that they pull and all the things that they learn from the bigger matches is like a web. So they spread out to different states that surround Michigan. When they come back, they pull that information back with them, and they can deliver that to like the newer shooters, the people that don't go to nationals. And even if they're not attempting to do that, like it's not a big plan, like it happens naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt, we've got our gear. We've decided that, as long as you have acceptable, safe gear, you can go shoot a match. So what's next? Once you get to the match, what should you be conscious of before it even starts?
Well, first thing is you want to be there before, on time, because our match, like we're always trying to run the match on time, and people that show up late, it just causes problems for everybody. So you want to be there on time. You want to register, sign in. They usually have like a table or somewhere you can go, or like a house that is the registration table or the sign-in table. You go there, you pick a squad. For anybody that wouldn't know, the match usually has like, if it has 100 people on 10 stages, they break it up into 10 squads of 10 people. You shoot one stage with those 10 people and then rotate with those 10 people to the next stage.
Right. It's like it's like golf where you have your foursome and you go to different holes.
Yep, exactly. And so once you get in and sign in, you pick a squad. If you know anybody, you can try to squad up with your buddies. If not, you can just pick one, or you can tell the RO or the person that's there, be like, hey, I'm new, I've never shot before. Is there a squad I should be put on? And he might put you on his own squad, or you might know some people that are extra helpful for new shooters. You might shove you over with them.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there are always those extra helpful people that will that are willing to help new people and get them through the match.
Yeah, for sure. Typically, after you sign in, I mean, they'll give you they'll do a shooters meeting, which everybody gets brought in, and they kind of go over like any kind of announcements they want to do, or any kind of like specific safety rules they want to talk about. And from there, you would branch out into your squads and start shooting the stages.
Right. Okay. So when you're shooting a stage as a new person, what should you be doing?
Well, this will probably be conflicting with a lot of people's opinions, but when you go to your first match, almost everybody will tell you the same thing, and it's like, don't worry about anything, just try to be extra safe and extra cautious. I do agree with that to an extent, but we're also there to like have fun and to learn. So I think when you're on your stage and getting ready to shoot, be conscientious of like what you're doing and make sure you have a focus on safety, but also like shoot the guns, shoot fast, like do what you need to do, go through the stage and have a good time. We don't want people to show up and then be paralyzed through like rules or paralyzed through safety. Like the people that show up already are at odds with themselves typically because of the whole it's like public speaking type of thing, being in the spotlight.
Right.
And I know a lot of times, like when I first started, everyone always told me, even after I shot for a year, they told me, slow down, get my hits, slow down, get my hits, slow down, get my hits, like after every stage I shot. And after a while, like my first couple matches, I was pretty comfortable and I was pretty safe. Like I had the muzzle discipline down, I had the trigger control down and everything. And like people telling me that was just like kind of giving me another mental block. Like I couldn't progress my skill set anymore because I was so focused on just being a newbie. And when you go to your first match, I mean, everybody's going to say that, but don't be paralyzed by fear through the rules or like be super on edge because you think that you're going to do something. Everyone's going to get like jump on your ass because of it. Keep your finger out of the trigger guard when you're moving. Keep the thing pointed down range, and try not to point at your feet when you're running with your pistol, like the Hollywood cop type of movement. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's that's one thing that I see a lot is we have to get rid of like a lot of the tacticalness that we've been watching on Dirty Harry in Magnum Force and Lethal Weapon and stuff like that. So there's a lot of put the gun down, run, bring it up, and even with rifles, because unfortunately so many of us have watched the Magpul DVDs that we think that's exactly how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, you're going to get information overload. Everybody's going to be telling you how to do this, how to do that, not like in any kind of way that's detrimental to you, but they're going to be like, hey, you should hold your pistol like this, you should do that. They're going to be trying to help you out as much as they can. Probably get pounded with information the first time you're at a match.
Sometimes I think people are overly helpful. Like if you
yeah, for sure.
If a new person says within earshot or electronic earshot of say 5 shooters, if they say to one shooter, how would you will get 6 answers. And I
sure.
I know that math doesn't add up, but the I kind of caution like from time to time, like, hey, I would choose one person to listen to here and then decide if that person's full of shit and move on rather than
I think
trying to accept 6 different answers from 6 different people.
Yeah, I've always kind of been out on my own. Like I work with my little clique of guys that I train with, but really I don't really listen to what other people are doing, like from a mental state, and I don't really pay attention to what other people are doing from a technique. I just figure out what works for me and what I can do to make it the fastest, even though sometimes it might be goofy or people might not agree with it. Like I know from my own testing that this is the fastest way that I can do it at this time in my life, And I think everybody that tells you something, they're all trying to be helpful, and everybody has information, but in every piece of that information has like some truth to it. And you need to kind of, after a while, you'll be able to decipher which parts are useful to listen to, which parts aren't useful to listen to. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you get a lot of information and you can take it all to heart, and everyone's trying to help you. But just because some guy tells you should do something one way doesn't mean that you can necessarily get stuck on it. Like if you're out there on your own training or practicing and you find a better way, or someone else tells you something different, try everything. Like try it out and figure out for yourself what works and what doesn't work. That's one of the best parts of the shooting sports in general.
Yeah, especially when you're new, because you're like a blank slate,
Yeah, you got so many things to work on when you're new. After your first match, you'll probably have like 5 or 6 things immediately that you're just absolutely terrible at that you can go work on and see immediate benefits at your next match.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I want to add to your statement about gun handling there would be, I notice clay shooters and a lot of hunters just kind of hold their gun like they're carrying a lunchbox, and ended up pointing it at a lot of people. And I've seen that at practical shooting matches as well, with someone with like a hunting background or a clay shooting background thinks like, oh, this is an empty gun, it's okay to just go ahead and point it at my entire squad. And that is never okay.
You're talking about when they're done shooting, or are you talking about when they're actively shooting the stage?
Done shooting.
Oh yeah. That's true. We got, like, I see that a lot. I've actually disqualified people for that. Like, not necessarily anyone that's new.
Yeah.
But I've seen people kind of like wipe the crowd with their firearms when they're walking around with it. Typically, when you're done shooting the stage, the RO will tell you, to clear your firearms. You clear them out. He confirms them as clear, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, they're always safe and we want to muzzle people. If anything, we should know at that point, hey, the gun's, it should be clear. The RO cleared it, you cleared it. It should be clear. But just from an etiquette standpoint, you don't want to be pointing guns at people.
That's correct. And I've had that as well. Like when I'm downrange resetting, and then I'll see a guy talking to the timer and he's pointing his shotgun at me, and I don't really like that so much because I can't tell from 20 yards away if it's loaded or unloaded or what.
Yeah, you'll kind of see the wave happen, like when somebody does that, like all the people standing behind the firing line kind of like move out of the way real quick, or they duck or dodge.
Yeah, exactly. So it does happen. Be cognizant of it. Whatever your range's, social norm is, up or down, just keep it pointed in that safe direction. Generally, in most of the matches I've been to, it's muzzle up, carry them off, go put them on the either the preload table or back in your bags into the berm, and don't point them at people, which seems pretty simple.
Yeah, I find that the new shooters actually sometimes have like better muzzle control, like the idea of where the muzzle's at, just not when they're shooting the stage. Like they want to like wipe their feet and stuff from doing the Hollywood cop, like keeping the pistol down type thing,
Yeah.
But when it comes to like keeping their pistol down range, they usually do a pretty decent job at it. It's when people start getting like, they think that they're awesome now. That's when they start getting like careless and not really paying attention to what they do. That's when they start breaking the 180 on the stage, which is what we really don't want to do.
Right.
But new shooters typically don't have too many 180 problems from my experience. It's usually the people that are just getting comfortable, and they get a little too comfortable. Like, we are using dangerous firearms that can hurt or kill somebody, so we always want to make sure that we're safe. But like I was saying before, I mean, obviously be as safe as possible, but remember that you're there to learn and have fun. Don't be paralyzed with fear. Sure.
Well, and so this podcast is for new folks. So if someone's listening and is not really familiar with the 180, why don't you describe what we're talking about there with the 180?
The 180 just represents like 180 degrees. So it's like an invisible line that follows you downrange as you move through the stage. And if your muzzle gets close to the 180 line, sometimes you'll get like the courtesy of somebody saying, hey, muzzle, like you're getting real close, or the RO might say something to you. But it's typically not something that's defined in the rules. Like, they don't have to give you a warning. If you get too close to 180, or you break that 180 plane, so you're basically pointing up range slightly, you can get disqualified for that. And there's also times where, depending on how the stage is designed, the 180 might move or change, or depending how the bay is built. So if there's ever any questions about the 180 or what you can and can't do, like if you're planning on engaging a target from a certain spot and you're not sure if it's safe or not safe, or if it's part of the 180 or not part of the 180, you can always ask the RO at that time.
Yeah, and the time to do that is obviously before you shoot.
Yeah, for sure. I'll coach people that are new and going through the stage. Like, if they stop and have a question, I'll answer the question, as an RO. Typically, typically coaching is not allowed, but at a club level, like, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, there's a lot of coaching. You want to keep it to a minimum. If you're like, you're there with your buddy, you don't want to be yelling stuff at him, because the only thing your buddy should hear, really, if he's not right there and ready to accept something from the RO, like he asked him a question, the only thing he should be really listening to is like a stop command. Like, if somebody were to yell stop, it could be a spectator or anybody. That would mean that you want to stop what you're doing immediately due to whatever reason that could have occurred to initiate a stop. So when people start heckling or getting a little too comfortable in the back lines, it can cause a lot of confusion for the shooter, and it could also potentially be a safety issue.
Yeah, and I've actually seen some heckling, and I've experienced a person enthusiastically telling a story that contained the word stop while I was shooting, and and I just I stopped and like looked at the RO, and the RO just kind of shrugged at me like, well.
Yeah, I've had that happen more than once, where somebody gets excited about something that happened, and I kind of stop what I'm doing, and I like point the gun in the berm, and I just look back at the RO, or I look back at the crowd and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Then I realize that I'm just standing there for no reason and I take off.
Yeah,
like half a dozen times.
I'm of the opinion, like, I heard stop, I'm stopped. Like, now we're going to unload and show clear, and we're going to do this over again.
Yep.
But yeah, so the stop command is the important one that you for new folks out there. The stop command is the important one that generally means there's something unsafe that happened, or you're about to do something unsafe, or you did do something unsafe, and just stop, freeze, and wait for further instruction from the range officer. When we're not shooting, when we're done shooting, what should a shooter be doing? What should an individual be doing?
Yeah, when you first go to your stage, if you're new, when you first break up from the shooters meeting, everything, if you're a new shooter and you go to your stage, alert your RO that you're new. They'll probably move you to the bottom of the list so you can kind of see what's going on. But typically when you're not shooting, there's a couple things you need to be doing. So they usually have the shooter that's shooting at that time. That's the shooter. And then they have a person that's on deck and a person that's in the hole. Those are the top three people. So the person on deck would shoot after the shooter and then so forth. If you're not one of those three people, you should really be you should have your gear together, your mags loaded, all your stuff ready to go. And when the person is done shooting the stage and the range officer calls it as safe, you need to go down and reset the targets. Like I said earlier, we're all pretty much volunteers, and we all need to do work. So I do work setting up the stage, designing stages, me and the other match directors, and even the competitors when they show up, they also need to do work. So we're all paying a fee. We're all enjoying that club's that venue at a cost. And I mean, we all have to work as a community to make sure that the match can go through like smoothly. So when the shooter's completed, you need to go down and reset the targets. So we're picking up the steals, we're pasting the papers, wait for the RO to score anything. And then once everything's cleared out, the RO will check their stage for clear, and then we'll go to the next shooter. Other than that, like I said, make sure all your gear is ready to go. There's nothing worse than like being called up to shoot, even though the order is the same every time, and then the person's not ready, and it kind of causes a delay. And whenever you cause a delay in the stage, it can kind of back up the stage, and people that are in the squad behind you get backed up. So it can just cause problems. So we need everybody to work, and we need people to be ready to shoot when it's their turn to shoot.
Yeah, and I would say that the best way to make friends on the range when you're a new person is to reset with a hustle, which means, pace targets, steal that is knocked down, put it back up, that kind of thing. Once obviously it's safe to do so. So yep. Like you said, it's a participation sport in that we get to shoot, but it's also a participation in that we reset and help make the stage back to normal for the next shooter.
Yep. And then I guess the next thing you would do when you move out to your squad in that way is that you would be waiting after you're all prepared and you're resetting stages. You would wait until you're the person that's the shooter or the person that's on deck. A lot of times the RO will tell you if you're the shooter that's on deck, they have like a spot for you to stand. So that way you're ready when the shooter is completed. When the shooter is completed and the stage is reset, the RO will call you up. At that time, he'll say, give you the load and make ready command. You might have your pistol in your hand. You might have your rifle. It depends on how the stage is set up. So you might load your pistol first. Typically, you load it under his discretion, and then you would holster it. It could depend on the stage, though. You load your rifle, load your shotgun, and he'll take you to the start position. And at that time, usually I ask the shooter if he has any questions about the stage, because sometimes they can be confusing. And if not, I ask if the shooter's ready. It doesn't really matter if they say yes or no. I just say shooter ready and then give it a pause. So you don't have to acknowledge shooter ready at all. And then I say stand by, and I'll hit the button on the buzzer. And once the buzzer goes off, you can complete the stage as safely as possible, as fast as possible, any way that you want. And then when it's done, what I typically tell people is when they're done shooting the stage is just wait for the RO's commands. Being an RO in general, like I said, is a volunteer job, and it can be a tough job. I see a lot of people like try to hustle the range commands. Like they know the RO's going to come over in there and tell them to unload and show clear. So they just start doing it and racking rounds out and letting them fly across the stage and trying to catch them in the air. I've never been a big fan of any of that. I don't do that. I just wait with my pistol pointed down range if I ended with the pistol, and I wait for the RO to come over, and he'll say to me, or she will say to me, unload and show clear. At that time, I pull the slide back, show that's clear, let them look down the barrel. They'll say, hammer down and holster, hammer down and holster. I suggest not rushing the stage command set in any case. Like sometimes the ROs will get kind of salty about it to begin with. But if you rush the stage commands at the end of the stage, I mean, there's probably not anything bad's going to happen. It's just kind of disrespectful. If you rush them at the beginning of the stage, you'll probably get disqualified. You don't want to load your pistol until the RO tells you.
Right. The other thing I would add to that is that when you're loading your pistol and holstering it, it's not a tactical situation, right? So you can look where your pistol is going, look your pistol into the holster, make sure that you're not grabbing your shirt or your jacket and getting part of that in there. And then when you're unloading and showing clear, you're not on the and obviously when you're loading and making ready, those 2 times you're not on the clock, so you don't need to hurry that. And
Correct.
Obviously don't take a ton of time and waste time, but don't hurry through it to where you're moving so fast that you're going to cause an unsafe situation. Point the gun at yourself, point the gun at someone else, that kind of thing. It's time's over. We're done shooting here. Now let's just make that gun safe, and then we can go pick up those targets.
Yeah, a mistake that I see a lot of people do when they're new and they first start out is when they're holstering the pistol, like at the end of the stage, they're kind of excited and they're ready to go back and get out of the way because they want to like hurry up and get out so people can set the stage. But they'll turn like in the direction of their holster. So if they're right-handed, they'll turn clockwise and holster their pistol. You want to make sure just stay facing down range and then holster. And once it's holstered and you can feel it and it's clicked and it's good to go, or it's retained in there pretty well, then go ahead and move. But people get excited. We'll do the holster and the turn all in one motion, and it's really easy to like wipe the RO or wipe your feet or your legs or like turn up range slightly when you do that. Yeah,
I saw that one recently at an indoor bowling pin match. The dude was like basically 3 steps off the line before he had his pistol holstered, and he had to turn around and do all that. So he pointed his gun at like 3 or 4 different people. It was kind of sketchy. The other one I saw recently, Matt, I don't know if you've experienced this one yourself, but if you've got like a magazine that you've dropped on the ground, or even that last round that you racked out, I'll see people bend over to pick that up before the pistol is completely holstered, and now they're pointing that gun backwards toward the crowd.
Yeah, something else that I do is I kind of just let those rounds and mags and everything hit the ground. Like I don't worry about them. Like until my guns are like cleared out and they're safe, I don't worry about them at all. Like, people that are real well experienced, they want to do cool stuff or whatever when they're unloading and showing clear. That's fine. But I'm pretty experienced at this point. There's no point in that. Like I don't waste any time. It's not adding time to my stage. I unload, show clear. When everything's safe, I'll bend over, pick up the mags, bend over, pick up the ammo. You see people like they're so worried about picking up those mags that they're like picking up mags while the RO is over there telling them to unload and show clear. Yeah. Like there's plenty of time to do that while they're resetting the stage. You don't have to hurry up and do that before you're getting cleared out.
Yeah. I had a guy recently that was talking about like, oh, I engaged that one and that one. And it's like, dude, let's unload your pistols here. We can talk about this afterwards while we're scoring stuff. No big deal. But let's make sure your stuff is clear here so we can get people downrange and we don't have hot firearms sitting around.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah. All right. So the unload, show clear, you're done shooting. Now what's your responsibility?
Usually if I'm done shooting or the people that are at my match, I allow them to, skip out on resetting the stage for a minute there while they get all their stuff together. And then usually by the time you get your stuff together, the next shooter will be done. You can go out and reset again. And then during that downtime, you really want to be loading up your mags and everything for the next stage. Usually it's I don't want to say it's hectic, but a lot of times you can kind of get rushed a little bit. So you get done with your stage, everybody wants to move to the next one. So it's possible that you might be like the second shooter up on the next stage, but you don't have any of your mags loaded. So now you're wasting your time that you could be using to look at the range or look at the stage. You're over there trying to load your mags up real quick or get your gear together. If you have any downtime at all after you're done shooting, get all your gear back together, figure out where you want to, like put all your stuff back in your car or back in your bags, whatever you want to do, and then start loading up your mags, getting your stuff ready for as if you were going to shoot that stage again, because you're going to be moving over to the next one pretty soon anyway.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then, of course, once your mags are loaded back up, back to resetting, which is a huge one.
Yeah, there's usually you can load your mags a little bit, and then the shooter's done, and you can go out and reset, and then you come back and load your mags a little bit, and the next shooter will be done. You go out, reset, and come back. So you kind of do it in like chunks.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So then, once the range day is over, once you've shot all the stages, what's kind of the norm at your local club?
Usually like our ROs at the beginning of the day, we walk around, do like an RO walkthrough, and we kind of we discuss certain parts of the stage or certain parts of the range brief or the stage brief, just to kind of get the ROs all on the same page, because we do traveling ROs just for the normal monthly. And I'll tell the ROs at that time like how we want the stage to be torn down. So again, being at a match, you have to do a little bit of work usually. It really depends on where you're at, but typically the shooters help tear down the match after it's done. So I'll tell the ROs what we want to do. So whatever stage you end on, once your squad's done shooting its last shooter, at that point everybody should be done for the day unless there's something else that goes on. And normally I have some kind of plan for the shooters to clear out their stage. So the RO tells them what they need to do. Like if they need to move walls or barrels, usually it's like involves pulling the steels up and putting them in a pile, moving like the barrels off to one side. And at that time, when the stage is torn down and everything's cleared out and everybody's leaving, I usually let people just go hog wild and pick up whatever brass they want.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's something that we didn't cover in the actual shooting part. Generally, kind of leave that on the ground. You don't pick it up, right? Whereas if you're going to the range for like a range day, there's a lot of what the hell is it called? Brass hounds. People that just kind of like nose to the ground, and I've seen that from a lot of new folks that are out there picking up brass when we're all ready to shoot. It's like, hey, buddy, you got to come back here. Can't just be downrange picking up, shiny things.
Yeah, some matches will be called like a lost brass match. They'll usually tell you that ahead of time. It means like your brass, when it hits the ground, it's not yours anymore. It's like basically part of the match fee. Mm-hmm. And they do that because they don't want people walking around picking up brass when they're supposed to be shooting a stage. Like it delays the match. At my match, I usually tell people, hey, don't pick up your brass. Like some people will do it a little bit if they're shooting something weird. But typically people leave the brass on the ground, and when the whole day is over, there's usually so much brass that, you can pick up as much as you want. You can walk between stages and pick it up. Yeah. But during the stage itself, when you're done shooting, that's usually not a good time to be picking up brass at a 3-gun match. I know at like pistol matches or like IDPA, a lot of times like picking up your brass is part of the stage setup, or like the range pickup. Like people will be picking up your brass and hand it to you after you're done with the stage.
Yeah.
But typically 3-gun, there's just too much stuff going on, and it kind of delays the stage. So we usually save that for the end of the day.
Well, yeah, we did that at my old range that I first started shooting at, and we joked that this one guy had named all his brass and had been shooting with them since the 70s.
Yeah, I've seen that guy before.
Yeah. He's got special marks on all the head stamps, like with a Sharpie, so he knows which ones are his.
Yeah, they're color coded.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not kidding.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Well, Steve always has red, and Jim's got black, so that must be Jim's.
Yeah, and don't step on it. Don't step on anything that has a colored head stamp on it.
Yeah, you'll hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times. All right, so then once everything's torn down, at my club, generally someone will come around with like a flatbed trailer with a pickup truck. We just load all that stuff on there, take it over to the whatever shed or hut that it goes in, and put that in its proper place. I usually, if I'm haven't been to a club in a while, I find myself asking a lot of, where does this go? Where does this go? Where does this go? And it pays dividends to remember where all that stuff is going in its proper place, because someone put a lot of time into stacking that stuff in there, and it makes it a lot easier to set up a match when you come back.
Yeah, usually for our match, it takes me pretty much the whole day to set it up with the other guys. And we'll be out there for 12 hours or so, maybe setting up a local match. And then the next day we show up. I'm usually there an hour and a half early, along with the other match directors. And then when the match is over, I end up staying like another 2 hours later. So it ends up being a really, really long weekend for any of the match directors at our club. And when the shooters can pitch in a little bit and help tear down the stage, we always tear down the stages pretty quick. It takes me a whole day to put them up. It takes like 10 minutes to tear them down. Yeah. Usually at our club, everyone kind of jets after they tear down the stage because it's kind of oddly shaped, like their trails and everything. But we go through and pick stuff up. Anybody that stays behind to help us like load up the trailer, like you're saying, is super helpful.
Yeah. And, Tell me if I'm okay in this, Matt, or if I'm kind of a jerk. So I'm not really good at getting up super early, and every match here in Colorado has, like, for me, a 2-hour drive to get to. So I kind of make the concession of like, hey, I can't be out there early to help with setup, but I'll stay until every target's put away, and then that makes me feel better. Now, is that okay, or am I kind of a jerk in that?
No, I think that's fine. It sounds like you guys set up and shoot the same day. We don't do that. We do it on opposite days. So, but yeah. I have shot matches where you show up. I've showed up like on the day to set it up. So I set it up on like Saturday, shot the whole match on Sunday, and then shot the whole match on Saturday after setting up, and then torn down on Saturday the same day. That is an incredibly long day. Like, that is just punishing.
Yeah.
But
a lot of our matches, like if we have like say 5 stages, like they'll set up 2 or 3 or major components of several stages. the day before, and then last minute touches of walls and things like that, because it gets windy where we shoot out on the plains, so they don't set up things overnight that can blow away.
Yeah, that makes sense. We I think we can build like a really good like club level match, because we spend like the whole day setting it up basically and walking it like 100 times and having the other ROs walk your stage and vice versa. But so we don't have that whole setup part. I'm sure that if we were setting up the day of, the more people we could get out there to help just move stuff, the better. A lot of times people come out and help us on the Saturday before the match, and I'm kind of designing the stage so it gets to a point where like I can only have so many people help anyway.
Right.
Like I can only really have like 2 guys helping me, because I don't like, not that I don't want them touching the stage, but I'll put a lot of like really tight angles and stuff in there and like move stuff around because of the options. And it takes a lot of like eyeballing it and walking back and forth and moving things around. But I still need people to do like grunt style work, like hammering and stakes takes a long time. Just loading up the trailer back and forth or grabbing certain things I might have forgot.
Yeah, the dude that hammers in all the stakes is the unsung hero of the match.
Yeah, we actually got one of those, one of the guys that we shoot with, he's an engineer, like a lot of shooters are, and he took a hammer drill, and we made like an attachment for it that connects to those big stakes that we use, and you just hammer drill them in the ground. It's pretty much the greatest thing ever made.
Oh, that's awesome. You gotta send me like a picture of that, or put a video on Instagram or something.
Yeah, I'll grab one. I think I saw some of the SMD guys using one too. It was pretty similar. Ours had like a little collet to keep the nail trapped until it like hits the bottom. But it's pretty much just a hammer drill that has like a flat face on it, and you can just run stakes in with it.
It's brilliant. I love it. All right, so then once the match is torn up, high five and you're out?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, you can pick up brass if you want. Usually I'll be there for a while. Like we're going through like financials and stuff like that. So if somebody wants to stick around, like, talk or bullshit or talk about stages, or, they have any questions, usually I'm sticking around after the match for that. I don't know how it is at other clubs, but typically there's like a little dead zone after the match where you can kind of hang out and talk to people if you want.
Yeah.
And then
one thing I liked about shooting up in Minnesota at Forest Lake is that there's a barbecue place nearby. So there's like a opportunity for beer and barbecue afterwards. In Colorado, it's like everyone scatters in different directions because we're out, so far out in the boonies.
Oh yeah, for sure. We there's plenty of guys here. They all get together and like go to the sushi place, or they all go together and go to like the burger joint down the road or something. But yeah, you might get into like a little clique there where you got like, once a month you go out, shoot the match, and then afterwards you go out to dinner or whatever. Like after you meet some people, you might get invited out or whatever. But yeah, there's a good sense of camaraderie in general in like the shooting sports. It's a pretty small community, so once you get in there and you start meeting people and you shoot some stages and shoot some matches, you get real comfortable real quick. Like that first hurdle we were talking about at the beginning when we first started talking here, the mental hurdle, like that goes super fast.
Yeah.
And after that, you're more worried about just not being nervous on the clock, just so you can shoot better, not so that way, people aren't looking at you, so you're nervous. You're nervous because you want to shoot the best you can, so you're trying to get rid of your jitters so that we can make better shots, not necessarily because you're like worried about anybody being judgmental of your performance.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, so one of the things we touched on quite quickly was just gear, right? So we kind of said like the gear that you have is okay. So come out with that, see where you fall, have fun, and if you like it, then you can kind of choose from there. So obviously you want to get recommendations from some of the better shooters at your match, and if you got a buddy that knows what he's talking about, take recommendations there as well. Let's talk about like the different divisions that you can be in, and what gear fits in those divisions. And obviously this is going to be kind of general because each rule set has its own little caveats, but there's a lot of similarities between the rule sets.
Yeah, I think the first thing we should probably talk about is like your belt setup, or like how you carry your gear. Mm-hmm. That's the one that seems to get people the most. Like a lot of people have the shotgun and stuff. They understand you need a shotgun for 3-gun, but people in general, from what I could tell, go hog wild on the belt. Like the only thing you really need for your first match is a holster that'll retain your pistol and won't fall out when you run.
Right.
Other than that, you don't need a whole lot. Like you can load pistol mags out of your pocket. You almost never load rifle mags anyway, so you can load those out of your pocket, no problem. And if you really have to, you can load shotgun shells out of your pocket as well. I know my first 3-gun match I went to, I had like 6 shell caddies, like a spot for 2 AR mags on my belt, a spot for like 4 pistol mags in my pistol.
Jeez.
And even I was like super loaded up, and I realized like I took all of it off like the first stage, so I didn't need any of it. I just needed the holster. So, I mean, my normal setup for a belt, like my normal setup without moving anything around is like a pistol holster, a one 8-round shell caddy for shotgun, a dual pistol magazine pouch, and a rifle pouch, just because, and I barely ever use a rifle pouch, but I don't like going into a stage without like an extra source of ammunition. Like I don't want to go, if I'm going to use one mag in the stage, I bring 2 mags. If I'm going to use 2 mags, I use 3 mags, or I bring 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really my basic setup. It's only got 4 things in it: a holster, a caddy, a dual pistol pouch, and a rifle pouch. And that's what I run 90% of the time.
You know,
and I see people out and they'll have like 16 shell caddies and like 4 pistol mags and things like that.
I'm very similar to you in that setup. I guess for shotgun, kind of the way that I do it is I'm a little bit more I guess conservative or pessimistic depending on who's talking there.
Yeah.
Than you are. So I will load up with as many shells to complete the stage as I need. I will put that on my belt, and then I have the whatever's in the shotgun is like bonus. So, you know, at the end, if everything goes right, I should have like 9 shells left, right? So
yeah, that's a good plan.
Yeah, that's kind of Chris Anderson told me that a bunch of years ago, and I kind of stuck with that, and it seems to work well for me. But I'm the exact same way with rifle and pistol. I take one more magazine than I think I'm going to need.
Yeah, I kind of do the caddies. Like if I plan on loading 4, there's like 8 rounds in one caddy. I bring 2 caddies. You know, if I touch a caddy, I'm going to bring an extra one. So if I'm planning on using 2 caddies for the stage, I'll bring 3. But
okay.
Really the only changes in my belt too much is I add or subtract caddies based upon the shotgun count.
Right.
Otherwise, it stays the same all the time.
Yeah, and I generally take the caddies off just because they run up in front, so it's easier to reset stages and lean over and pick up steel off the ground.
Yeah, same thing with me.
Cool. So then let's talk about divisions real quick. So there's generally 3 divisions, you know, and it depends on where you shoot at. There can be more, but we kind of run basically 3 divisions here in Colorado, and I know that in Minnesota, like heavy is a big division. Do you guys have a lot of heavy shooters in Michigan?
No, we actually only run the 4 divisions. We run the 3 standard divisions and then heavy, and that's it. Typically, we have like maybe 1 heavy shooter.
Okay. Well, and for folks that are listening and don't know, heavy is like basically a 308 rifle, and then you know, depending on the rule set, other things that go along with that, which can be a pump shotgun, can be a semi-automatic, can be a 45 pistol, can be a 9mm, and that's super rule set dependent on that one there.
Yeah, that's heavy as a specific rule set. Talking about that one first is not super popular right now in general. It's more expensive to shoot because you need 308, and a lot of times you need a 45. But really, if you plan on shooting heavy, or a 308 and a 45 and like a 12 gauge appeals to you, make sure that you read the rules. Like I said, always read the rules, but read the rules specifically for heavy if you're going to participate in that, because the heavy division rules are very non-standard. They change a lot depending on where you go, whereas the normal 3 standard classes that you see pretty much everywhere, they're pretty much the same. Depending, I mean, there might be little intricacies here and there, but they're pretty much always the same.
Right. Well, let's talk about those 3 different divisions that are kind of standard overall.
Yeah, the first one that I would talk about would be like irons or tactical irons or limited. This is usually defined by the AR-15, or the rifle they're using, not necessarily an AR-15, can have it's either iron sights or it has a non-magnified optic like an aim point or an MRO. And the pistol is non-compensated, non-optic, usually has a limited magazine capacity or length of like 141.25 millimeters. So any standard pistol mag is just fine to use in that class. And then the shotgun is limited in there. It's either limited in tube capacity, or you definitely can't have a comp, and you definitely can't have an optic on that shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so for example, like a 3-gun nation rule set, I think limits it to 8 in the tube. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's kind of like two different ways that tack irons or limited goes. It's either it's almost always you can have one optic on the rifle and it has to be non-magnified. That's pretty much standard across them.
Yeah.
3-gun nation style is the pistol's limited to 15 rounds and the shotgun's limited to 8. And then most every other rule set, the pistol's limited to 141 millimeter mag length, which is like roughly 22, 23, 9mm rounds. And the shotgun there's no real rules for tube length, but typically what you'll see is like a 12-round tube.
Right. Yeah. Most people run 12-round tube, and in most rule sets, it's 9 rounds in the gun to start.
Yeah.
At the buzzer.
Yeah, I think at like a club level, attack irons can actually be like if it doesn't have the limitations on magazine capacity, so it's not like a 3-gun nation match. Attack irons can actually be like a beneficial class to shoot. It's not necessarily like the lowest division. Like a lot of people see it as like the lowest gear requirement division.
Yeah.
When a lot of times using that MRO on like a club match where that only goes up to 50 yards, it might be a benefit over using like a magnified optic where you're never going to adjust it anyway. Like you lose weight, you lose the parallax. And attack irons can be a very competitive class. If that's the gear that you have, you can run in there and shoot. It typically doesn't have the participation that like some of the bigger classes do, but it's definitely not like something that you need to like, you have to move up to the next classes at some point. You can shoot irons for your entire shooting career.
Yeah, and since I've love irons. Like I started in irons, but once I started shooting targets past like 400 yards, I was like, maybe some magnification would be kind of fun here. But
Yeah.
In Colorado where our matches go out to 200, like iron should be huge because you don't need a scope. 200 yards is for, even I'm 37 years old. I think you're a little bit younger, aren't you? Aren't you like 32? 31. So we have pretty decent eyes still. And
Good enough.
200 yards is not bad with a red dot or like a, prism scope or something like that.
Yeah, our local match only goes out to 100. The one that I run, that's all we have. So, I mean, at that point, attack irons, if there's no magazine capacity limitations, it's actually like the preferred class probably to shoot.
Yeah.
Because, over the other ones, aside from like maybe open. But if you start getting out to like 200, that might depend more on like what you're doing, like, or how old you are, how well you can see, or what optic that you have.
Yep.
Like when you go to your match, if that's all you have, just use what you have. If you can't engage a target and you can't hit it, or you don't think that you can hit it, you can run past it. It doesn't matter. Like you don't have to engage it to continue. Just shoot at it a couple times. If you don't think it's going to happen, then just leave.
Yeah.
But
don't get hung up on it.
Depending on your local match, like if your local match is going out to like 500 yards, then you might have to worry about like getting, an optic or whatever. But there's people that are still shooting irons out to 500 yards.
Yeah.
And like you said, 200 yards with an irons is, it's probably not a benefit over like the optics classes, like the magnified optics classes, but it's definitely not going to like kill you. Like you can still engage targets at that distance. Like that's a perfectly reasonable distance for a red dot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then, you're scored against your division anyway. So you're only competing against the people with the same gear as you.
Yeah, that's true. You're only shooting, if you're shooting irons, you're shooting against the irons guys. And that's it.
Yeah. And that's an important distinction. But when I lived in Texas, I would go shoot like dissident arms matches. And, I remember the first time I went there, Mike Whiteside's giving the shooter's brief, and he's like, we're not going to shoot too far today because we had to pull some targets in because of swamp and flooding and blah, blah, blah. So we're only shooting out to 430. And in my head, coming from local matches here in Colorado, I'm like, you're kidding me. Like 430 is not too far. Like what is far for you guys? So in that case, a lot of people want to add some magnification to their rifle, right? So variable scope, and now they're bumping into a different class, and that takes them to what's generally called like tac optics, or tac scope, or in 3-gun nation they call it practical, right?
Yeah. So that's this tac optics, or whatever we want to call it, is the most popular class by far. Typically you'll see like 70% of the whole base there is going to be shooting that one class. That's pretty much the standard class that you would think of when you shoot 3-gun. It's defined as like your rifle's allowed to have one magnified optic on it. So you can't have like a red dot on top of like an ACOG, or you can't have like a sideways, like a 30-degree cant red dot, but you can have a magnified scope, like a 1-6 or a 1-8. And you can have irons on the side if you want, but you can't have anything with glass in it. Basically, the pistols rules are much the same as like the TAC irons division. That's non-3-gun nation, so it's a pistol, no comp, no optic. You can pretty much do whatever trigger mods you want to do. It can be any weight. There's no real worries there. You can put whatever mag wells you want on it, but no comp, no optic, and the magazine has to be 141 millimeters or shorter. And the shotgun's much the same as irons, like we talked about before. No comp, no optic. Outside of that, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah, and in most matches, outside of 3-gun nation rules, the difference is the optic on the rifle. That's the only difference.
TAC irons, attack optics, many times is the exact same class. It's just that in optics, the rifle has a magnified optic. Something else that we should mention too is the standard classes, heavy irons and optics. The shotgun has to be a tubular magazine, so you can't use like a Saiga. Using anything like a Saiga is going to bump you up a class.
That's a very good point. And those box magazine shotguns are getting super popular, especially with like the dudes at Dissonant Arms and the stuff that they're doing. So that'll bump you into open, or Three Gun Nation Rules calls it unlimited. And there it kind of gets it gets to be a lot of fun, and then maybe a little bit more expensive when you're buying dots and stuff like that. But so what are those? Like the shotgun, you can do box magazine, you can have compensators, you can have red dots or scopes or whatever you want to put on them.
Yeah, you have multiples of those if you want. You can have 2 compensators or 2 optics or whatever. You can use a box fed magazine shotgun. I know a lot of people actually that when they first start shooting, they shoot open because they have the box magazine shotgun, and they do just fine. I mean, most people, their open pistol will have like a dot on it in a comp, which a lot of people's pistols don't have. But at the local level, I don't really know how much it helps. I mean, it's obviously a benefit, but you can go out and if you have a Saiga and you want to shoot 3-gun, you can go out and shoot. You're just going to be put in open class, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, and it'll actually be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the open rifle is pretty similar to the TAC optics rifle as well. You can have basically any muzzle device you want on there, like from size, whereas like TAC optics, usually it's a 1-inch by 3-inch rule in TAC optics and TAC irons for like how big the compensator can be.
Right.
In open, you can do whatever you want. And also in open, you're allowed to use like supporting devices like bipods, which are banned or barred from the other standard classes.
Yeah, and if you have a match that does a bunch of crazy shooting positions and real far targets, then you can get into weird stuff like bags, like bringing shooting bags with you and everything for your rifle.
Yeah, if you decide to be an open shooter, you better have a truck, because you're going to bring like an entire bed full of different accessories to shoot with, because every open shooter I see has like as much gear as the next 3 TAC optics guys combined.
Yeah, I don't think open shooters are allowed to fly. Like they always miss the weight mark, right? Because they got so much crap. Yeah, they have too much stuff.
They got like 60 pounds in just in bipods.
Yeah.
Different size bipods for different occasions.
Exactly. Well, and if I missed it, I apologize. But then one of the cooler things about the open division on the rifle is the offset red dot that a lot of people do.
Yeah, so I use like offset irons because I typically shoot TAC optics. So I have like an iron sight. So if I'm using my scope and it's on like 3 power, and there's some suddenly like real close papers, I can just cant the rifle 30 degrees counterclockwise from my view, and use the side irons. And I mean, you still have to line the irons up, and they might not be the best for longer range. I mean, it's the same drawbacks that normal irons would have, but in open you can have a red dot mounted there instead. So you got the glass with the dot, and you just can it over, and it's like going from 1 power to 3 power, 1 power to 6 power instantly.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. I got to play around with that in practice a little bit for a couple matches I did where they had one division for ARs and it was open, and that was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, the offset red dot is awesome. Like I love the offset irons as it is. So when you put a red dot there, I mean, it's just great.
Yeah, it makes it super easy, super fast. Just put that dot on stuff and click away.
Yeah, I mean, open, like I was saying before, you can be brand new and shoot open, and you can play with all your toys. Like if you have some goofy gun you made, like I see a lot of guys have like Glocks with like an under frame mount that goes up over the slide. They use like an optic on it, like a T1 or something.
Yeah,
and it's just goofy, but it doesn't matter. Like you can go ahead and use it. Just shoot what you got, pretty much. They'll find a class for you.
Absolutely. Well, so anything that we want to cover on gear here?
Not anything else I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, I think that pretty much nails it. All right, so we talked about getting to the match, the mental hurdle of getting to that first match. We talked about shooting the match, etiquette on resetting, safety issues, things like that, range commands, and now we've covered gear. Matt, what else we got?
Not much. I mean, the only thing I would say, if you're a new shooter and it doesn't matter what area you're in, but there's usually going to be some kind of like local community we're talking about earlier in the broadcast here. We're talking about like Trigicon is big in Michigan, Phoenix Ammunition is big in Michigan. Like those are our key players in that sport, and they really help out like the local match for us. So I mean, when it comes time to look for gear, like after you're kind of figuring out what you want to do, there's no reason not to look at the sponsors that support your local area. So I mean, I'm not necessarily saying to look at my sponsors for my area or my match, but I mean, if you're from like the west side and there's MGM targets, I mean, you want to buy some targets, there's no reason not to look at what's local. You might be able to get some kind of deal on it. You might be able to do a pickup or a local pickup. And typically the people that are supporting like the 3-gun sports in general, I mean, they make awesome gear. They make really good gear for the sport, and a lot of times that they are shooters. So there's no reason to look at them first over other people. But really, all these sponsors help these products, or all these sponsors help these matches happen, and like the bigger matches and the prize table matches. And just wherever you're from, Minnesota, JP, it doesn't matter. Just look at who's local to you and purchase those products if you can. You don't have to do this, but always be cognizant of who the sponsors are for your local events and try to support those companies.
Yeah, and these folks that are building products specifically for 3-gun, like there's a passion behind it. It's not the most lucrative business out there, right? They could be they could make a whole lot of money elsewhere, but there's a lot of passion behind it, right? And and they're also advancing the technology, which comes up with cool new stuff for us to play with.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. We're a real small community. It's real tight knit. Like I said, as soon as you start meeting people at like your first match or your second match, I mean, you're going to see those people at matches that are at different venues as well. Like there's a lot of bleed over between local matches, and eventually you're probably going to know like everybody in the area. And maybe after that, you might know everybody like in the state or like in the tri-state area. And that's going to go for the businesses as well. You'll probably meet a lot of people that run those businesses, and you'll see a lot of that gear popping up often. So I mean, it's just part of being part of the community, really.
Absolutely, I think that's a good point to touch on, and I'm glad you brought it up. So I'm gonna throw this out there. If anyone has any questions on stuff in the Colorado area or anything for that matter, because I've been fortunate enough to shoot all over the United States, just hit me up, Dave@3gunshow.com. I'll be happy to help you out if you have any questions or anything like that. Also, if you see this post for this show, put a comment on the Facebook or on Instagram or something like that, and Matt and I can answer your questions. We'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, and at this point, me and Dave, we know a lot of people in the areas in all the states. I mean, between the two of us, we could probably find somebody in your state or local to you that you can hook up with to go to a local match.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, because if you're like, hey, I'm in Missouri, but I don't know where to shoot, and I wish there was a match here. It's like, I know 3 guys that run matches in Missouri, really good ones, and I would be happy to introduce them to you.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So Matt, man, this has been a lot of fun, dude. I really appreciate you tackling this topic with me, and you're like the perfect guy to do it, because I know for a fact, I know personally, because I've been contacted so many times by people that you've helped through the sport, how much you give back, and I totally appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime.
All right. So any last words before I close her out here?
No, I mean, if you're a new shooter, just get out there and get it done, and from that point, branch out, find new people, find new matches. If you want to, like I tell people, like there's some people that treat shooting like bowling. Like I treat bowling when I go to it, I just want to throw the ball as hard as I can down the lane and smash the pins. I'm not there to be competitive. I'm there to have a good time with my buddies like once a month, right? There's a lot of people that treat 3-gun like that. If that's how you want to be, then go out there and have a good time once a month. If you want to get more competitive, then there's always venues for that as well. There's ways to increase your skill set, and there's no better way to increase it than just going to matches and finding holes or flaws in your skills that you can work on and practice.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. And there's room for everyone, right? I know several people that shoot 1 or 2 club matches a year, and that's enough for them, and they're happy. They go out with the gear they have, they shoot, they have fun, and then they're done.
Yep, I'd say like 20% or maybe like 40% of every match that we have is like almost like unique names. Like they come out to like 1 or 2 matches a year, but they're not every match. And then like there's always our core people, they're there for every single match. But there's a lot of people, they just kind of come and go. Like if they have a free weekend, they might come out with their buddy and shoot the match, or they might bring someone out with them. And that's perfectly fine. You don't have to necessarily be like the most competitive person in the world to come out and shoot 3-gun.
That's true. Just be a good person, and a 3-gun will treat you right.
Yeah, and reset the targets.
Yeah. Did we cover that one enough? Reset targets.
Reset the targets.
Yep. All right, Matt. Thank you so much, man, for being on the 3-Gun Show again. Totally appreciate you. I appreciate you spending your evening with me here. And as always, man, I'll see you in the range soon.
Yeah, I'll see you around, man.
Hey, before you take off, check out the show notes at 3gunshow.com for links to things that we discussed in the podcast. You can also sign up on Patreon as a 3-Gun Show supporter or purchase 3-Gun Show apparel. And I was serious about that in the interview there. If you have any questions or anything, you can email me, Dave@3gunshow.com. post on the Facebook post or the Instagram post, and with any questions about 3-gun, and I will try to help you get in the right direction. And I encourage you to go out and shoot a match. It's a ton of fun. It's a great community, and you will not be disappointed. This podcast is also brought to you by LAG Tactical. I've been using LAG mag pouches and holsters for years, ever since James Casanova introduced me to their Nova holsters and their first generation competition mag pouches. They have a new design for mag pouches out now in the MCS, the modular carry system, which features a 2-piece design and fits a wide variety of pistol mags as well as different brands of AR mags. I got to see the prototypes in action when Scott Green won the Lucas Oil PCC Championship, and I'm excited to run them myself. Check them out at lagtactical.com. Quick reminder that if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcast content, so you will always get the very latest. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll see you on the range.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.